Thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me. It's so wonderful to be back in New York and seeing so many old friends. Before I start the lecture, I want to say that this lecture is dedicated to Jack Josephson and Dr. Magda Salih. Without these incredible people, nothing would have happened. They believed in this project, but nobody did in 2006. We'll have a special feature at the end of the lecture to honor Dr. Salih and Jack Josephson. So here we are. We just finished our 2018 season. It's our 12th season in the South Associated Necropolis. You are looking at our logo, our wonderful dog we found in 2006. This logo was designed by our assistant director, Dr. Catherine Blakeney, here, and most photographs and drawings in this presentation were also taken by Catherine Blakeney. This presentation is, well, much smarter than I am. I am not a computer person, but then that's what assistant directors and children are for, right? We are an Egyptian American mission working under the auspices of the Ministry of Antiquities, and the South Associated Necropolis, most people don't realize where it is, because everybody knows Assasif, which is North Assasif, and South Assasif is on the other side of Kurna. The necropolis was lost for a while, for a long while, and rediscovered by the project in 2006. Our project is now, I would say, a huge institution, because our team members, and you see just a few of them, our epigraphers, ARCE Graphe, Ken Griffin, Miguel Molinaro-Polo, our wonderful bone specialist, Luis Bertini, and Salim Ikram, our Egyptian team members, Ramadan Ahmed Ali, and Azal Nobi, and Yulia Budka, our pottery specialist. Every day we have more than 100 people at the site. Experts, workmen, conservators. In the middle of the slide, you see a group of conservators. It's an incredible Egyptian team, very talented young people who grew up working at the site, and now they're one of the most skillful and really incredible conservation teams in Egypt. They are photographed with the director of the Antiquities of the West Bank, Fatih Yassin, who is a big supporter of the project, work with us. As well, we are very grateful to all the organizations who make our work possible and support us, definitely the Ministry of Antiquities. We're very grateful to Jack Josephson, Dr. Magda Salih, the American Research Center in Egypt, for the grants we received from ARCE, and the ACE Restoration Project in Washington, the South Associated Trust in London. We want to thank all our mission members and our friends and supporters. So going back to South Associated, it's one of the early plans of the tombs made in the 70s by Dita Eigner, who now works with us. All the tombs were under the houses. That's what they looked like. It was a village. And finding the tombs was a huge challenge, because they were hidden under the houses, destroyed, forgotten. Everybody, all the professionals, all the colleagues, considered them lost and destroyed entirely. So it was a big challenge to start this project, to believe in this tomb, to start looking for the tombs of the South Associated Necropolis, the 25th and 26th dynasty, and we were together in this challenge, a very small group of people, myself, Catherine Blakeney, Dr. Magda Salih, and Jack Josephson. 4 of us believed in it in 2006. That's why a lot of things happened. The South Associated Necropolis now the tomb of Archeyeru of early 26th dynasty, and 2 Kushite tombs of Karkamun and Karabaskin. That's our concession, 3 tombs. That's why nobody believed in this project. Look at the tomb of Karabaskin in 2006. Practically nothing. Destroyed, covered in modern mud brick, sand, no traces of carving inside or outside the tomb. But now we have the court. The first Kushite court ever built on the West Bank of Luxor. It's the earliest Kushite tomb on the West Bank. That's what the entrance to the underground part of the tomb looked like in 2006. Tornische now is standing fully excavated, and he is our wonderful Karabaskin, very damaged by water, flooded so many times, destroyed by later occupants, but still alive and still very much present in his own tomb. So he is Karabaskin, the mayor of Thebes, 4th priest of Amun, the first Kushite nobleman who built his tomb on the West Bank in the Theban necropolis. The image of Karabaskin we found in 2006. Something else belonging to Karabaskin we found in 2016. It was our big discovery of, 2 years ago now. Look at this room. It's a cult chamber, a chamber in the tomb of Karabaskin. You probably see the outline on the floor, which is outlines the descent to the burial chamber. It took us a long while to get to this point when we started exploring this area, hoping to find the burial chamber, well, still definitely not intact. The tomb of Karabaskin was part of a large modern village, but at least to find something in it belonging to the original burial. That's the first thing we found. The burial chamber was flooded, and the first thing we saw was actually a passage cut in the flood deposit leading into the burial chamber, cut by the robbers, of course. It's a robber's passage. We started excavating this passage, hoping that something was still left for us to see in the burial chamber. And it was coming and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, the sarcophagus of Karabaskin. We could not expect a sarcophagus. It's our discovery, our granite sarcophagus is the first Kushite sarcophagus found in situ in an elite tomb. So it's we could not anticipate the discovery of this magnitude. The sarcophagus is truly monumental. It's over 3 meter long and 2.5 meter high. You can't see very well, but it is red granite. It was left unfinished, as the whole tomb was. The burial chamber, yes, here you see the section of the sarcophagus. The walls are very thick, and the lid is practically solid. So it was impossible to open it. The robbers who came there first, at least twice, couldn't open it because of the weight of the lid, and all they could do is to move it a little bit to the side and break the side of the sarcophagus to get in. They did, and all the burial equipment is gone, but the sarcophagus itself is standing, and it is an amazing discovery. It's similar, but it's monumental quality to the later Kushite sarcophagi of Aspelta and Lamani, but on the West Bank it's quite unique. We were able to get inside and excavate inside, but for that we needed a person as small as Catherine here. She's the smallest mission member, and she usually climbs in every crack and every possible hole. So Catherine was able to sneak in and work inside the sarcophagus. Here's the ramp that was built to level the sarcophagus down into the burial chamber. So the whole architectural arrangement was actually there to support the path of the sarcophagus into the burial chamber. Our architect, Dita Eigner, even suggested that it could be possible that the sarcophagus was delivered to the tomb, and the tomb was still in the process of being built, and the sarcophagus was moving into the tomb while the tomb was still in the process of being carved. So it was quite an amazing journey of the sarcophagus from the open court to the burial chamber where we found it. And this year, in 2018, as I mentioned before, we had a long season. We just got back from Egypt after a 6-month season, maybe even longer, and we started our work in this small room in the tomb of Karabaskin on this side. It's on the south wall of the pillared hall. The room with no inscriptions and no indication to whom it could belong. Clearly a secondary intrusive burial, but there was nothing in the shaft, in 2 burial chambers. We were going down day by day, finding literally nothing in debris. It was entered before us and quite skillfully emptied. We didn't have even blue cylinder beads. You always have blue cylinder beads. You touch something, you get bags and bags of beads. Not here. No beads whatsoever. Our archaeologist, Marion Brew, was getting more and more frustrated, saying that it's terribly unfair to have a shaft and 2 burial chambers and nothing in them. There must be something. And she was right. Here's Catherine Blakey photographing this something, which is this. A set of canopic jars. Alabaster canopic jars. The whole set in situ in a cubic cutting in the middle of the burial chamber, burial kingdom arrangement. And here we have our happy team. It's Marion Brew and John Billman, the head of our registration department, a wonderful inspector, our chief conservator, Abdurazak Mohammed Ali. Here they are celebrating this discovery. It took a little longer before we could read the name. The canopic jars were inscribed. who is it? Shabib?
That's Shabib, yeah.
It's Mohammed Shabib, one of our best conservators, and injecting and later cleaning the jars. And he's the name, Aminyurdis. So here we are with the lady of the house, Aminyurdis. And that's it. That's all we know. We still don't know who she is. We may discover more. It's a popular name in the 25th and 26th dynasty. And more information came from the jars themselves. Here they are. This wonderful set, complete, a bit damaged, but not so much. And the lids are beautiful pieces of sculpture, model with details, incised on the surface, elegant carving, and incredible faces carved for Aminyurdis. And these canopic jars, hollow inside, meaning fully functional. The revival of functional canopic jars starts with the Harka, and it goes through the 26th dynasty, based on the canopic jar formula and the functionality of these jars. We dated them to the 26th dynasty. So there was an intrusive burial of somebody called Aminyurdis, a lady Aminyurdis, who had this set of canopic jars, definitely more burial equipment that was gone a long time before we came to the Acropolis. Inside of one of the jars, Selimi Kram was able to detect a package containing liver. She was not very happy about this liver and said, what did you say, that it was wormy or what?
Yeah, she said it was maggoty.
Maggoty, yes. The canopic jars were announced by the Ministry of Antiquities, and we had the great honor to be invited to exhibit the canopic jar at the Luxor Museum. The Luxor Museum, as you know, is one of the best Egyptian museums. We absolutely love it. The museum gave us space, and we were able to bring the jars and put them on the shelves in the Luxor Museum. It was a wonderful moment, which we celebrated. The whole team, a wonderful, huge international team. Well, just a small part of it right here in the museum. And next year we're invited to have a larger exhibit of our finds. We are planning a 4-meter long case, and we're already now working on the design and concept of this exhibition that will be featuring the South Associated Conservation Project. We'll find new monuments, we'll find new people. I mean, here this is one of them. There is a suspicion, suggestion, whatever you want to call it, that she could be related to this person, who is one of our major discoveries, because he is a lost high steward of the God's wife, Nitocris. And he was missing from the chronology of the high stewards. His name is Peribusted. He is with his text, which is a solo hymn, and his name is right here. Peribusted, the son of Pabassa, was first found some traces of this person were found in 2014 when we found the stela in the court of Karabaskian. Apparently, the tomb of Karabaskian was reused in during the 26th dynasty, time of Psamtik II. to create this burial place for Pedibusted, son of Pabasa. Our first suggestion was that his father, Pabasa, was the owner of the famous North Ossetic tomb, 279, but Erhard Grafe already proved that he was the grandson of Pabasa. He was the son and grandson of Pabasa, and he inherited his title from his grandfather and had office after Pedihraznet and before Angkor. All famous people, incredible tombs in North Ossetic. So Pedibusted would have had another wonderful tomb in North Ossetic if he lived longer. He probably held office for a year, two, and ended up buried in Pushai tomb in South Ossetic. The entrance to the tomb of Karabaskin also recarved for Pedibusted. So we have Pedibusted, we have his shaktis. We know he was buried in the tomb of Karabaskin. And now we have Lady Aminirdes, who could have been related to Pedibusted. Could it be a double burial with two burial chambers and the side room? We still don't know, need more research, but all these new discoveries, all these new people, new spaces, new art is very exciting. The tomb of Karabaskin, everybody believed didn't exist anymore, is full of surprises and keeps surprising us over again every year. And here we are moving to the tomb of Karakomun. Tomb of Karakomun in 2006. This crack in the middle of nowhere. It was impossible to enter it. I thought first that if we clean a bit, it would be possible to send Catherine inside and she would jump into the tomb. Yeah, that's her job. Squeeze into small places. But it was impossible to jump in because there was no space to jump in. The tomb of Karakomun collapsed completely. Only years after, when we found the ceiling of Karakomun on the floor, I realized how impossible was my dream of jumping into Karakomun. 12 years later, no jumping. Well, but we started removing bedrock and sand, taking it out, built this huge ramp, walked into the tomb of Karakomun from the top for quite a while. Not anymore. Karakomun himself. Our beautiful Karakomun on the east wall in the first pillared hall, found in 2006, first proof that the tomb of Karakomun still exists. It looked like a pile of rubble, and yet Karakomun was still there and still alive. And our incredible dog of Karakomun, look at this sophisticated modeling, the elegance of this dog. Everybody's favorite, the dog became our logo. Here's the tomb, Karakomun now almost at the beginning of the season. It's happened to be quite big with a large court and a painted burial chamber. That's how it was found, all full of debris. Here's the burial chamber today, reconstructed. We're very grateful to ARCE for supporting the a project of reconstruction of the burial chamber in the tomb of Karakomun. The tomb is now quite big, with an entrance, long staircase, vestibule, court, first pilot hall, second pilot hall, and a large burial compartment. But everything was on the ground. Everything collapsed. Every pillar, every wall, practically every wall. This beautiful wall with our Kurkamun found in 2006, it was the only actually standing wall. The rest of the walls and all the pillars were found in fragments on the ground, tens of thousands of fragments. We started our reconstructions on the floor, and then we got an idea with this myriads of fragments. Why not reconstruct Kurkamun in situ and put these fragments where they belong? The process started in 2011. Every reconstruction goes through a floor reconstruction, then digital reconstruction, and then physical reconstruction. Egyptian limestone, Egyptian lime, we make everything. We don't have a quarry, no. We bring our limestone from Helwan, but we make lime. We make bricks, you name it, we make everything. We're such an incredible workshop, very ancient Egyptian. We make everything ourselves, out of Egyptian materials. We reconstruct an ancient Egyptian tomb using Egyptian materials. I would say that we are having a lot of fun doing it, which we are, but it's so enormously difficult. And it's so exhausting. And yet, when we build something like this, it's like the happiest moments of our lives. So, we started our first reconstructions in the first pilot hall, and look at the second pilot hall, right there. Yeah, that's our second pilot hall. Nothing, literally a pile of rubble. When we excavated the second pilot hall, there was nothing standing, not even one wall. Look at it, and yet, we found so many fragments, and it's one of the pilasters in the second pillar hall. But then we found a big section of this pilaster simply on the floor. Or, look at this, all these fragments came out of a secondary shaft. We were taking these fragments out of the shaft was refilled with the fragments of the south wall in the second pillar hall, and we were putting them together as a stone puzzle on the floor. That was definitely a lot of fun. And they all fit one after another. We were building this wall on the floor. Many fragments we found, and some in situ showed that the tomb was left unfinished. A lot of grid lines, a lot of preliminary drawings, and it really helped in the process of rebuilding the tomb. Because we had original grid lines, we had original measurements, we had the whole process. We just had to see the tomb through the Egyptian eyes and pretend to be ancient Egyptian. Experimental archaeology, yes, but with so much information we had, our work is a true recreation of an Egyptian monument. Look at the false door. We found the statue of Osiris in 4 different places. Put it together. Here the false door reconstructed. Look how many fragments we used to reconstruct the false door. Fragments found in different places over so many years came together, and now the false door is standing in the tomb of Kurkamun. The south wall, it was a very special project. We had the legs of a male person who was recorded by Lepsius in 1840s. Was still standing, but still there. But we already have the legs only. the drawing published by ARCE, recorded also the grid lines. So we use the grid lines from the drawing to reconstruct this figure of Karakamun's brother, Nisaminopet. And yes, we have much less than was on the drawing in the 19th century, but Nisaminopet now is standing, and his seated figure, the only relative in the only relative of Karakamun, brother as a more important figure than wife, children, parents. In fact, very Kushite, if we think of a royal family. Architrave with a very nice looking painted cavata. First, I was sure it was part of an entrance, but after we found the original location of this fragment, oriented east-west, we have to build the architrave and cavata east-west, creating a temple space leading to the statue of Osiris. So here we have the second pillared hall in the tomb of Karakamun as a miniature temple of Osiris. The text of the Book of the Dead, the whole concept of the second pillared hall, presents it as a sacred Osiris space. The south aisle of the second pillared hall leading to the Osiris statue of Karakamun, and the north aisle leading to the burial chamber with the body of Karakamun as Osiris was buried. So we have thematically three access lines that actually present Karakamun as Osiris and his tomb as a temple tomb. We have a solar cycle and Osiris cycle starting in the open court. Here we move with a solar universe to the first pillared hall, to this text on the pillars that are the text of the hours of the day. And night, we go through all the 12 hours of the day and all the 12 hours of the night. The first time we have this royal text in the private tomb on the pillars of the hall. And here we have these three access lines for leading us to different images of Osiris in the second pillared hall, return to the solar cycle. On the west wall of the second pillared hall, here we have this Assyrian solar unity that is one of the important features of Kushite monuments all over Egypt. This year, in 2018, we concentrated on the Tornische entrance to this subterranean part of the tomb of Karakamun. Thank you, ARCE, for the grant to reconstruct this part of the tomb. Now, that's what we had at the beginning of the season, meaning nothing. The Tornische didn't exist, and Tita Eigner reconstructed it like this. It's a monumental entrance deep inside of a niche with a vaulted ceiling. But we didn't have any of it standing. What we had is amazing art we found in this area. The only area we have raised relief, low raised relief of offering bearers, leading offering animals to a large figure of Karakomun. It's one of the fragments. On the back of the Tornatia, we have the same scenes in sunk relief, elegant, sophisticated, detailed carving, as you already probably understood. We have amazing animals in the tomb. It's our favorite stork, an offering bearer from the back of the Tornatia area, a huge offering list in preliminary drawings, carved elements of sunk relief, painted with this huge amount of material. We had to rebuild this area. We started figure by figure, putting them together in a sandbox. Then, he is our conservator, Abdurazik Muhammad Ali, carving a sort of pocket for this puzzle in a piece of new limestone. And then all the small fragments go into this depression in a new limestone. And here they are safely installed there. Here we have Abdurazik, Said, and Catherine, who was responsible for calculating human figures as our artist and photographer. And then these blocks with already reconstructed figures were becoming part of a bigger reconstruction when we started rebuilding the Tornatia in its real size, which is a wonderful architect, Dita Eigner, calculated as the largest Tornatia in the history of Kushite architecture. Over 5 meters high, and it was a task, I must tell you. Is the structure growing? We already got to the Capetta cornice level, and now we are putting the first blocks of the vaulted ceiling on top of the door frame. Here it is, standing. Still work in progress. Everything is still work in progress, but it's standing, and it's absolutely amazing. We'll continue building it, continue building the vaulted ceiling, continue putting more fragments, and the entrance of Karakomun is now what it should be, the most imposing and fabulous introduction of a tomb owner. The main entrance to a Kushite and Sayyid tomb is not the main entrance to the tomb, but the entrance to the subterranean part of the tomb, which starts with the Tornatia, with this vaulted niche with their elaborately decorated door frame in it. The more we reconstruct, the more we are able to research what we reconstruct, trying to analyze it, trying to understand what was happening in the Kushite period. Here's our best image of Karakomun, the largest on the and the most complete on the east wall of the first pillar hall. The quality of this carving is quite amazing, considering that these tombs were constructed after quite a long period of interruption in construction of monumental decorated elite tombs. Everything that was happening in these tombs, everything we find in the tomb of Karakomun is one of the first decorated tombs of the Kushite period. Everything was conceptualized by these incredible people who were part of this project. The tomb owner himself, maybe, priests, artists. They were not part of a tradition the tradition was interrupted. They had to create something completely new based on ancient references. And they had this freedom of imagination, of mind, of theological thought to create exactly what they wanted and interpret it the way they saw it fit into something new. We created two types of databases for analyzing our imagery, dividing iconography and implementation iconography or style into two separate databases. As everything had a reference, we kind of realized working in Karakorum that iconography of every image and the implementation of this iconography had different sources quite often and different vehicles for transmitting this information and these sources. With two different types of transmission, we had to analyze them separately so they would complement each other and none of this priceless information be lost or overlooked. If you look at the images, the way they are now presented in the tomb of Karakorum as you enter the tomb. Here we have the entrance trajectory. What you mainly see are the incredible divine images. Temple tomb. We always use this term when we talk about Kushite tombs. Yes, it is a temple tomb. And the best quality art, you may say, was created for the deities. You enter the tomb, that's what you see, and then you find yourself in front of the statue of Osiris, the main focal point of the whole tomb. It is more a temple than a tomb. Iconographically, it's proven, and the best art is created for the pantheon of the gods. But then, the more we reconstruct Karakoram's art, the more we see the importance of the exit trajectory as well. Look at this. When you exit the tomb, you don't see the same imagery that you see when entering the tomb. And it's not that you're just leaving this temple without getting some new experience. The exit trajectory presents the most incredible images of Karakoram himself, ending with this two biggest and most exquisitely carved portraits of Karakoram on the east wall of the first Pilan Hall. What we're getting here, inside one tomb of Karakoram, the first fully decorated Kushite tomb on the West Bank, we're getting actually two tombs in one. And one of them is more of a temple and another more of a tomb, in an Old Kingdom sense of tomb's purpose and functionality. And this kind of discussion could be started mainly on the basis of the quality of imagery in different areas. Who was the recipient of this tomb? who saw what entering or exiting the tomb? The tombs of Karakomun and Karabaskin, Karakomun and Karabaskin themselves are the personalities behind the revival of monumental tomb art. They started what we call Kushite Renaissance, and our analysis of what they created is one of our major tasks. Because these tombs became incredibly influential. So who were these people who created these tombs? This drawing was made by Raquel Agres, one of our member of our Spanish epigraphic team. She tried to imagine these people working in the burial chamber of Karakomun. Like, where did they come from? If Karakomun was the first Kushite tomb with a painted burial chamber, who the creators of the tomb, Karakomun himself, who they employed to do so? One of the avenues of research undertaken by our epigraphers is polyography that gives us an idea that these people were coffin painters. A comparison of polyography in the painted burial chamber of Karakomun and contemporary Theban coffins show similar hands and similar skills, similar signature moves. This research is done by our epigrapher, Miguel Molinero Paula of the University of La Laguna, and the team of his PhD students are Raquel Agres and Andrea Rodriguez Valls. Thank you. Another thought, look at the open court of Karakomun. If you look at the drawing of these niches, we have monumental Pernu chapels in the court of Karakomun, which looks absolutely unique. We don't have monumental Pernu chapels anywhere else. Where did it come from? The idea. Where are the other examples of this quite amazing symbolically charged concept? Here we are in Nuri later, but we have many features similar with what we have in the tomb of Karakomun, including monumental Pernu chapels. Mobility of the artists. Apprentices trained by the artists worked in Karakomun, and their pupils then moved back to Kush, participated in decoration of the tombs of Nuri and El Kuru. Another example of a huge jet pillar, which we had some problems of recognized as something that should even be in the tomb of Karakomun. Because a bird with a necklace with a jet pillar is something that was considered 26th dynasty and later iconographic motif as a vignette to chapter 85, BD chapter 85. In Darul Medina, for example, it's a rare chapter, but in Darul Medina, a boar bird doesn't have a jet necklace. Here we have it in El Kuru. Clearly, Karakomun was the first one to create this iconographic motif, then to Mentuimhat, Pabasa, and then to El Kuru. Were all these people connected? Again, mobility of the artists. New generations raised by the artists of Karakomun. Karakorum was this amazing creative workshop where a lot of new ideas were born and realized. They became hugely influential, and they traveled between Egypt and Kush quite freely. We always forget about how this factor of the mobility of the artists, it's a hugely important factor. These people walked around, they worked in different projects, they traveled from Egypt to Kush and back. We have to look for more connections, more material. A lot of research is now happening in Sudan. New records, new discoveries help us to reconstruct Karakorum in Egypt, and more realize the influential power of Karakorum as one of the first decorated Kushite tombs in Thebes. We all for sharing and talking, discussing between projects, first millennium BC projects in Egypt. We invite scholars who work in Sudan to our conferences, Thebes in the first millennium BC. We created this whole conference that we had two already in 2012, and did we have one in 2012?
We did, yes, 2012 and 2016.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
What would I do without you? And these conferences became a major workshop for brainstorming, comparing newly found material, new architectural, new archaeological discoveries, new ideas, visiting each other's sites, and trying to see a bigger picture of Kushite Egypt as part of Kush, East and West Bank together, temple decoration and tomb decoration. So we, with this conference, Thebes in the first millennium BC, we're creating a Kushite universe, trying to decipher this amazing, creative, innovative tombs. And all this started with a practically nothing, crack in the ground, and people not believing in Karakorum and Karabaskin. Nothing is ever lost in Egypt. It's really the land of immortality. All Egyptian monuments are immortal. And we are a very good proof of it. And now the South SSC Conservation Project became an institution excavating, publishing, organizing conferences, training students from many UK and American universities, involving scholars working in Sudan. We can say that we are creating something that will have scholarly immortality, and all this started with you believing in us, Jack and Magda, and your vision, and your love for the dog of Karakorum. When I was asked to write an article for Jack's Cachery, I chose this dog because Jack liked it so much and dedicated the dog to Jack, so it's your dog. And I want to say that people like you as a real incredible treasure, your generosity, your understanding of Egyptian monuments, your deep connection with Egyptian art, and your vision of the future of every monument. It's what you did for Egyptian monuments, for Egyptian archaeology. It's absolutely tremendous. And I I want to say myself how grateful I am, how grateful our project is to you. But I think many people will join me in expressing the deepest gratitude for what you did for Egyptian archaeology. Thank you so much. Now, two special presents for you.
Dog?
Did you know? Open it. I know. It's a precious. This. This one.
Oh, wow.
Special gift for you by our conservators, and we are presenting you with, probably a cop of your dog.
Lovely.
And our newest publication, Thieves in the First Millennium BC. Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much for what you are and for your incredible achievements. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much. You're with us.
Thank you. You can take your dog.
Regards the dogs.
I've already. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And thank you, Pischikova, for this fabulous lecture. Do we have any questions?
I'm just wondering what caused the collapse of the tomb and how recently did it collapse?
Well, a few factors. Floods to begin with. Lots of floods. We found so many layers of flood deposits. Late occupation. It started at the tombs of Tutankhamun and Karabaskin. They were reused already at the beginning of the 26th dynasty. And now we have 26th dynasty, 27th dynasty, Ptolemaic, Roman, Coptic, modern. People reused them, people used their limestone to build something else. And Karabaskin was still lived in when we came to the necropolis in 2006. Well, we first came in 2001, I think. And Tutankhamun completely and fully collapsed. It was a gradual process, but complete collapse is dated to most probably 1996. And after that, there was nothing left whatsoever. Already what people could see in the 70s was so little that Dieter Eigner, in his book, Monumental and Grabauten, he wrote in 1984, he wrote that a few more years and Tutankhamun will disappear completely. Now Dieter is working with us, recording. A proud moment that his prediction was wrong and the tomb is still there. Yes?
I'm interested in what you mentioned about the pillars in the temple-like hall, that the inward trajectory images that you made it in red are different than the outward trajectory in blue.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what is the difference between the two? I think you alluded to that, but I wasn't really clear what you meant.
When you enter the tomb of Tutankhamun as a visitor, and you walk from the entrance to the focal point in the second pillared hall, most imagery you see on the pillars and the walls is divine imagery. You're really entering a temple. And the focal point of the tomb is the statue of Osiris. We have Kurkamun in the tomb as a worshiper to Osiris, as the person who gives offerings to Osiris. So he's sort of secondary in his own tomb, because his afterlife, his resurrection is impossible without divine blessing. It's very different from the Old Kingdom. And yet we have so many iconographic references from the Old Kingdom. So we started thinking about the interpretation of an Old Kingdom tomb. It was reflected in the new space at all. And then while reconstructing all this imagery and putting them in place, we realized that when you exit the tomb, what you see mostly is Kurkamun. And the most elaborately carved images of Kurkamun you can see on the way out. You can't see them at all on the way in. So you get this kind of reverse concept and in a different perspective as a visitor. You see two different tombs in one. You are entering the temple and you have this processional route as a temple worshiper. And then you visit the tomb of Kurkamun. And many of the images of Kurkamun you see exiting the tomb don't have a divine component at all. It's not Kurkamun in front of the deities. It's Kurkamun at the offering table with an Old Kingdom style offering list. So there is this Old Kingdom component, not only iconographically, but conceptually as well. So that's what I
Thank
mean. You're
And
welcome.
would you mind if I said something?
Sure.
Okay. I'll make it very brief. I just wanted to say that I'm very touched and humbled by your honor. And I have never, in many, many years of Egyptology, met anyone like you, so dedicated and a great scholar. The one thing she didn't tell you, and I will, you saw that big pit where they found Karakamun. That was filled with 7 meters of garbage from the village above. The stench was unreal. They went through it and cleaned it out. So we owe you a great debt of scholarship and everything else. So thank you, my dear.
Forgive me, but I'm trying to get a sense of scale. Is this tomb bigger than most tombs in Luxor, or is it comparable, or the width of it, the depth of it?
Yes, it's bigger than most New Kingdom elite tombs. Definitely bigger than most of Ramesside elite tombs. It's not the biggest, but actually Kushite Egypt created the largest elite tombs ever built in Egypt. And TT33, the tomb of Ptolemaeus, has the honor of being the largest elite tomb in Egypt. Probably Mentuhotep is on the second place. So yes, they are truly, truly monumental. And monumentality of Kurkamun was part of his downfall, unfortunately. The tomb was probably built very fast. Kurkamun didn't live a long life. We don't know much about Kurkamun, if at all, but the tomb was left unfinished, and it's an indication of his probably short life in Egypt. He probably already came to Egypt from Napata as a man who had most of his life and most of his career in Kush. what I want to say that the tomb was too shallow. It was built too close to the surface. Better limestone and more security would be in carving it deeper and going for this huge size and speeding into finishing it was part of Karakomun's collapse, unfortunately.
Another question that you established in your discussion that Karakomun obviously was a very cultured man, a sort of a cognoscente of ancient Egyptian culture and art and what have you. There's references to the Old Kingdom. Two things that struck me, and they could just be completely accidental, but I was struck both by the Osiris figure in the false doorway, because it reminded me instantly of the figure in KV5, and also just when you kept showing the floor plan of the tomb, it struck me very much of the Temple of Luxor, with the way the front court is angled differently than when you get into the pillared sections. And I wonder, is it just coincidence, or were there references to existing monuments that were, or maybe you don't know?
It is an excellent question, because we talk about Kushite tombs, and the Tomb of Karakomun is one of the first tombs as of temple tombs, and they truly are. But they also combine elements from every possible type of monument in Egypt. It's a combination of elite tombs and royal tombs, definitely. Divine temples, mortuary temples, you name it. They use the whole history of Egyptian art as a huge pool of references. And as truly educated people and connoisseurs of Egyptian art, first Egyptologists, if I may say so, they were choosing meaningful features, meaningful to them, combining them into a new space created by them. And quite often they were referred, these tombs, as something secondary because they're so referential. But they're not. They're really spiritual workshops where people were creating something new based on something ancient, and it's very, very Egyptian. These people were always living in the past because past is sacred, and they were bringing the sacred references to the new sacred space. Speaking of the temples of the East Bank, it's very, very possible, and I think I even wrote it somewhere, that the Tomb of Karakomun and Karabaskin were probably designed by the same people who worked on royal monuments, the temples of Shabaka, treasury of Shabaka, Assyrian chapel at Karnak. So that's another connection, that they were probably the same people, and they were bringing references from Karnak. With the tilted axis, it was probably done to orient the tomb more to the processional way. And we probably, in Karakomun, we probably had a causeway leading to the processional way, connecting the temples. It was probably even a small chapel near the road, but it's yet to be proved, discovered, excavated. Still a lot to find.